the live stream from yesterday. I was asleep because it was like what, like 5 in the morning. Fuck that. I don't like staying up till that late to see it. So we'll watch it and we'll see what I think. Oh.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of, I guess, 3 Elite Specialization preview streams for Visions of Eternity. I'm Cal Cohen, joined by Taylor Brooks. We have some nicknames that no one really cares about, but they're on screen.
Oof.
Choose to read them. How's it going, Taylor? You excited?
Going pretty well. You know, have 3 super cool Elite Specs to show off to everyone. Super excited to, you know, display what we've been working on the past bit of time.
I hope you have water ready to go, because
I do.
For anyone, a bit of history. The last time we had Elite Specialization.
Oof, the sound difference between the two of them is massive.
The very first week, it was incredibly smoggy in Bellevue, and I sat on a stream coughing and drinking water for like 2 hours as I was talking about Elite Specializations. And hopefully we can get some good water screenshots in this stream as well. But we are going to kick things off today with the Troubadour, Luminary, and the Galeshot. Obviously, you know, we had a little teaser video earlier this week. We had a bit of an intro blog that went over some of the high-level ideas, high-level mechanics, some of the lore as well. Today we're going to be covering everything about all the specs. You're going to see all the skills. You're going to see all the traits. You're going to have developers explain some of the thought processes behind those skills and traits. And, you know, we're going to do this the next few weeks until we've covered all 9 of the specs.
That should address it.
The beta event where you guys are going to be able to get your hands on these. All 9 specs will be playable for about a week. And make sure there's plenty of time to check everything out, try everything out. Because I guess the big thing to keep in mind here, and even as we're talking and showing stuff on stream, is that these are still getting ready for beta. There's a lot of balance work we're still being done internally ahead of the beta, so some numbers might look a little weird, a little too low, a little too high. That's totally expected at this point. Even for the beta, we're not going to land perfectly. We've obviously seen some pretty crazy numbers on betas for some of the weapons in the past.
Oof, dude, he's referencing the 54 on Bladesworn.
To action a lot of those important pieces.
Yeah, it's good beta time.
Of the expansion. Anything you want to add, Taylor, before we just hop right in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. As with all the betas, like we said, all the art, audio, and balance still up in flux. All the numbers you see here are probably the numbers that make it to when the beta happens. So everything you see here, just focusing on the effects. And we have a lot of cool art still, again.
Okay.
Taylor is loud. Let me see if I can turn Taylor down a little bit real quick.
Hey, he did figure it out.
Okay, let's just do some quick audio checks, because we did an audio check, but not, I guess, the best audio check. Taylor listened to himself talk and said, "Yeah, that's a good audio level." Let's turn Taylor down a little bit.
I mean, his audio is probably fine. CMC's is probably
Can you say
low.
some words, Taylor, while I read the chat. See if anyone.
Yeah, I can do some improv speaking. I'm totally good at that. Is this better, guys? Please say yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna skip ahead.
With you, Taylor. Almost said the wrong word. We're starting with the Troubadour.
Don't worry, they fix it eventually. Bro, I just put a fucking compressor on the output, so it should be fixed.
And this kind of archetype has had a long history in this game. You know, starting even from when Mesmer was initially revealed, been asked for a long time. So that's kind of like one of the reasons we wanted to go with it, is it's fan favorite. Wanted to fully see it, realize.
Okay, dude, so we were correct. Like this. Okay, so they put notes here. So that's the when it's filled up. I'm assuming these are gonna like fill out. It's pretty cool.
In game.
I think it needs like a bit larger.
What it's going to do is going to be a more support-focused archetype, but it is going to have offensive capabilities and be definitely able to be played in solo play, and even more offensive roles, maybe as a DPS and instance play or like competitive modes. But that support role is kind of like what we're super focusing on. Going to see a lot of it throughout the kits. Its gameplay loop is going to be slightly different from 4 Mesmer's. You know, 4 Mesmer has clones where for the Troubadour we went with notes. Notes are, there's no in-game representation of them like clones. It's going to be like blades, where it's just an energy system. And then you're going to use those notes to fuel your instruments. And then when you use an instrument, it'll kind of float behind you, giving you a persistent effect. And then you're going to want to build multiple instruments. And then at the end of your gameplay loop, you're going to press crescendo. It's kind of a big, tight turning skill with some pretty decent effects. So I think talking about the support role, and why we also wanted it. You know, with Secrets of the Obscure, we released the rifle for Mesmer, which Mesmer into trying to be traditional support that can like, fully heal its allies and
It's lagging.
from the role. But with the specs that were released then, the only one that really made sense was Chronomancer, kind of de facto support. So we put a lot of utility in Mesmer's kit and put things on skills that weren't necessarily originally support skills. Chronomancer has the history of being a support, but it's always been kind of a support, or providing a lot of utility value. But when I'm becoming,
Yeah.
let me see for a second. Oh, right, that is correct.
But how's the volume? How's the volume, guys? We are so back. You want to get that spiel?
A more sustained pressure, so that Chronomancer can kind of regain its old identity, and Troubadour can kind of step in. So a lot of the ways it supports allies are more intentional and can hopefully lead to better gameplay. But then the first thing, you know, we can zoom in.
Wait, I want to go
you know,
back to what he
the
said
UI
there.
is the first thing you'll notice. You know, talked about notes. They're going to fill up at the bottom bar there. Again, there are no clones. Some of the reasons, we had multiple reasons for doing this. The first one was just that we wanted kind of people to focus more on keeping their instruments up in that gameplay loop, interacting with Crescendo, rather than having to worry about their clones being killed. And managing them, stuff like that. Also, in some game modes like World v World, when it gets larger scale, we want support Mesmer to definitely function, and we saw that when you're playing on Chronomancer that has clones, a lot of the time you can't depend on getting a high shatter count. So we want to make sure that this spec feels good to play, and you're not fighting your mechanic, and it does what you want. But going from the notes, like I said, they fuel larger scale. We want support Mesmer to definitely function, and we saw that when you're playing on Chronomancer that has clones, a lot of
Okay, so he used something that generates one clone, but that looks like two nodes to me, unless that's like one clone, that's one clone, that's one clone, that's one clone. So it's like 4 total. I thought it was going to be like 6. Interesting. We'll see.
Depend on getting a high shatter count. So we want to make sure that this spec feels good to play, and you're not fighting your mechanic, and it just does what you want. But going from the notes, like I said, they fuel the instruments. It's going to be a bit different from normal shatters. Normal shatters, they basically scale however many like clones you have. Like you do a mind rack with like, all 3 clones, going to do a lot more damage than 1. Instruments are going to be a bit different. When you play an instrument, it's going to be an initial effect, and this initial effect will have fighting your mechanic, and it just does what you want. But going from the notes, like I said, they fuel the instruments. It's going to be a bit different from normal shatters. Normal shatters, they basically scale however many like clones you have. Like you do a mind rack with like, all 3 clones, going to do a lot more damage than 1. Instruments are going to be a bit different. When you play an instrument, it's going to be an initial effect, and this
that looks like 3
constant.
clones.
It's going to be the same where there are 0 notes or 3 notes. And what's going to be different is that when you use it, the instrument will kind of float in the background, giving those bonuses like I talked about, and the duration in which it does that is scaling based on the notes. So you want to build up notes so that your loot is there for longer.
Okay, so what's this like? What is the buff on this? So 12-second cooldown, additional time per note 5 seconds. Okay. So this gives what? 4% healing increase to others, 4% damage, 4% condition damage, and 5% all stats. Holy shit, that's a lot. That's gonna get nerfed. Okay. Just looking at this at the moment, looks pretty good. How much uptime is this gonna have? Like, if you shatter this with 3 notes is the max. That's gonna be 15 seconds, so more time than enough, more than enough with alacrity.
And basically, more notes will have better bonuses, so that you have bigger windows to do things like strike the crescendo or use some of the utilities that we'll get into.
Yeah, so notably, it still counts to 3. They're just in groups of 2 notes, so you get 3. Still have a total of 3 here,
Right.
but there are 6 things that are filled. You know.
I believe the notes are actually on a scale and do play a little tune. If those who are musically inclined want to look into that, then that would be pretty cool. But you know,
Okay.
the note, it's three notes, like 3 clones. We wanted that kind of be similar to normal Mesmer.
All right. Should we hop into some skills?
Yes, we can look at the skills.
I'm just gonna start pressing buttons. Let's press
Yeah,
the
so
first
talking
one.
about
What's
loot,
going on here?
First one, you're gonna whip out the loot and do 3 waves. All the instruments are kind of replacements, like normal shatters. Like so, this one's gonna be the mind rack. It's gonna be the more damaging one. You know, when you do it, if you have no target, these waves will just go out in front of you, but you can use a target to kind of lock onto them. So this is just your damaging skill, your mind rack equivalent that you can see here that there are some baseline bonuses for that loot. We'll get into more. A lot of them are going to come from traits. So pretty simple skill. It's going to be the one you skill often. And then we can move on to the flute.
Probably I am going to be doing a lot of cheating on this stream, so no cooldowns are active, but you can see on skill facts and tooltips that there are real cooldowns on these skills.
Okay, so flute playing plus 5%, all stats, 4% healing to others, 4% damage, 4% condition damage. Do all of them give the same bonus? Because that's kind of insane. If that does, because what's that, like 5, 10, 15, 20% all stats at some point in time? Bro, that is so much damage. Holy fuck. This is going to be disgusting played silly. I could just see it.
Well, yeah. Tell me about the flute.
The flute, that's going to be kind of your cry of frustration equivalent. You're going to fluster your enemies with a note from your flute. It's going to do a wave in front of you, confusing people. And it's also going to have a sweet spot in the middle where it's like, you know, middle of the hitbox. If you hit them, you're also going to get a short daze, kind of interrupt. We wanted to give the skill a bit more utility. A lot of the time, the cry of frustration equivalents aren't useful in a lot of the builds. So I wanted to give it something.
There's condition damage.
Supports want to use it, even, you know, power
Really strong support as well as damage. Yeah, it looks kind of disgusting.
Onto the drum, the deafening drum. This going to be your diversion, the CC skill. You're going to slam the drum, do a wave out, and the wave will have kind of scaling effects based on how close the enemy was from you. So you want to be pretty close when you land this for the strongest effect.
Bro, this is disgusting.
Farther out, it's going to lessen into a daze, and at the last
it seems like it's going to be broken, is what it seems.
This is kind of, again, the CC skill you're going to get value out of this kit that, you know, all Mesmers have, and then we can move on to the harp. So the harp is going to be a harmonious harp is going to be your healing skill. The first thing you can notice is that it does not just give distortion baseline. I think Cal has
I have some traits on.
Cal has a trait on, we'll get to that, but the skill baseline doesn't provide distortion. We wanted this spec to, instead of having a high cooldown in Vuln like a lot of Mesmer specs have, we wanted to do it lower cooldown, more sustained.
Okay, so that's heal.
A lot of supports. So it's going to, you know, when you use it, do a burst healing, and then over time do some more pulse healing. This is going to, again, low cooldown, healing your allies, what you want to do on more traditional healing support. And so all of those skills. Yes.
Are you going to say something else? You going to say something else?
No. You will notice that these all are the instruments.
Hi, Genthier. No, this is the beta characters.
The crescendo that we've been talking about.
I didn't check out the.
Use the crescendo. You're gonna kind of have a warm up, where you're gonna conduct all your instruments to kind of strike a chord at once, and release a wave of energy. It's going to deal damage to enemies and also grant your allies barrier. And the effect of this will scale based on how many instruments you have. So it's gonna get right now 25% better for all of the effects based on how many.
Did he hover it?
Warm up, where you're gonna convince, and then the effect of this is gonna get additional effects based on traits. You can see. That it's going to also get Might and Fury based on a trait per.
Okay, so strike increase per instrument. Instruments playing in the background contribute to the amplitude, increasing the strength of the wave. Increase per instrument. Okay. Seems interesting. I think the damage is probably going to be too insane.
And, you know, ends up being a pretty flexible skill. That's kind of like your bigger payoff. But yeah, that kind of comprises the core of the profession loop. Again, building up the notes, using your instruments. I think you can probably aim to have 2 or 3 instruments up with like a correct rotation. You know, 4 if you're really going for it to get some powerful tides.
We know we're going to be getting 4 up.
Maybe I just mash all my buttons with 0 notes so that I can crescendo. Yeah. Probably not ideal, but it is an option available to you.
Yeah, you can, you know, use all your instruments at once to get that strong value immediately, but then you do lose out on having those instruments be up for the longer period of time. As we're going to see from the traits, there are bonuses that just come with these instruments being behind you.
Yeah, which is the insane part about this.
So we can go into the utilities next before we go into the traits. So the utility type for this elite spec will be tails. They're going to be kind of vocal things, just like shouts, where you're going to like say a message when you use them. And these tales are all based on the Legends of Tyria. They're specifically focused more on like lore and heroes you've known from Guild Wars 2, rather than like, you know, Revenant has like Guild Wars 1 things. But this game, you know, it's been around for a long time. So we're going to talk about the heroes that you all know and have played with as your adventures through the game.
So that's giving what, 33% healing effectiveness. Okay, dude, the amount of healing that this class is going to put out is just insane. Because what, it's like 4% per ally, per instrument up at a time. So what's that, like 16% plus another 33%? Like, if this is additive, it's, yeah, especially, it's not even the fact that it's like the best healer. Like, Chrono is already the best healer. Chrono is the best healer because of the amount of utility it brings, just because of Mesmer, like, base kit. And, like, you add that on top of, like, actually strong healing, like, this is going to be disgustingly broken. Like, healer's probably going to be, if we're honest, well, we're going to probably end up using rifle, definitely. And then you're probably going to want a generation weapon, so it's probably going to be rifle, scepter, shields is probably going to be what we're running 90% of the time. So this might just be insane.
So as I said, they're kind of like vocal skills, just like shouts. When you use them, there's going to be an additional effect. So, you know, you can...
But that being said, like, this won't be used in PvE at all. If it doesn't have... Chrono's getting nerfed, it will... Well, Chrono's not going to get nerfed. But if this doesn't give quickness or alacrity, it will never be played in PvE. So we will see if they do that.
This one's based around Almora Soulkeeper. It's going to grant offensive boons to your allies. And then you can see each of them have...
Brother, you're giving it alacrity. Oh, fuck me. Please tell me this isn't just like baseline it has alacrity.
Have a performance bonus, which is kind of the little hook. And basically all the utility skills correspond to an instrument, and they get stronger while that instrument's playing. So Almora is corresponding to the lute. So if you use it while the lute is playing, you'll grant some extra notes to yourself, so you can get some other instruments playing.
So wait. Recite this tale with the lute playing will grant you additional notes. Your bard is the new best friend? I don't know, Bozo. This depends on whether or not it gives enough alacrity, right? So, like, just looking at this, it's like, okay. It gives you 2 notes if you have the lute playing already. Okay.
And then we can go into
interesting.
Other ones. You know, next we have the Honorable Rogue, which is going to be Dougal Keen, the protagonist from the well-known, amazing...
Yeah, it's not enough alacrity.
That I'm sure everyone is aware of. He's a super cool character. But this one, he is a thief, a rogue. You know, his daring adventure is going to make everyone faster, remove conditions.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. I had no idea who this person was. I had to go look them up. I like how it's like, everyone knows who this is, bro. I don't know who this is. Okay? I mean, you have access to super speed and can remove slows.
And also
not bad.
Endurance, and he corresponds to the drum, so if that's playing, you can also give some super speed to your allies. And then the last one, or not the last one, the next supportive one is going to be the Tale of the Valiant Marshal.
Oh my god, dude, we get a... Who is it, lol? Dude, it's some guy. It's some guy who, like, found the Claw of Conor. That is, like, all he has that's special about him, okay? But no one cares. I don't even care. I know what he's done, and that's it's not even that interesting.
Hopefully people recognize this character.
Your defensive shout based on Traherne, another amazing character. It's going to give your allies protection, resistance, break, stun, you know, pretty powerful defensive effects. And if you have the harp playing as well, it's also going to give your allies barrier. And then the last skill is actually going to be an offensive ability. It's going to be the Tale of the Tortured Mastermind, with another person that, you know, we talked about this in the blog, Scarlet Briar. This is going to be a more targeted shout. You're going to almost mock your enemies viciously, one might say. Kind of targeting on them, summoning those laughing clockwork knight heads on your enemy.
Okay, but what does that do? Okay, so it does torments CC. 8 seconds of torment. I don't know. Is this 8 seconds of torment per hit? Because that might not be terrible. 25-second cooldown. Okay, the third hit removes boons. Damn, that's actually pretty strong. The fact that it removes boons.
The first pulse will leave them weakened, then you'll leave them vulnerable, then it will strip boons, and then the last one will daze them. And it corresponds to the flute, so when you have that active, it's going to apply additional torment per pulse, and also do some extra defiance damage for, you know, PvE situations.
Okay, so it is torment once per tick. If it's plain.
I'm hoping you're hearing them as Cal's playing, but when you play these tales, like I said, they have spoken lines. Each of them have about 4 that'll play in order. So as you fight with them and use them, it'll like kind of, you'll hear a poem that your character will say, and I'm sure, you know, it'll be on the wiki that everyone correlates, but, you know, pretty cool narrative work from the team. And, you know, nice little stories you get to hear about these characters that you've, you know, played through in the game. We can also go to the heal, you know, Aurene, we showed that one off. It's going to be a chunky heal for you and your allies. when you use it, and its performance bonus, it's going to, instead of corresponding to a specific instrument, it's just going to care about how many instruments you have up. And so when you use it, if you have 2 or more instruments, you're going to apply this Scion's Reprieve buff to your allies. That's going to increase the incoming healing that they get from all sources.
That's insanely broken, probably.
Have 2 instruments up before you use the skill to get like pretty good value. And then we can move to the elite skill, which I'm sure a lot
Sorry,
of
wait, did he say including yourself?
Scion's Reprieve buff to your allies. That's going to increase the incoming healing that they get from all sources, including the heal. So, you know, definitely make sure you have 2 instruments.
It's only to allies, not to you.
To get like pretty good value.
I just wanted to check that.
The elite skill, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about already. This is the Tale of the August Queen, based around Queen Jenna's protection of, you know, divinity's reach in the living world. And its effects it's going to give Distortion and Chaos Aura to allies.
I'm sorry, did that give Distortion, Chaos Aura, and all of the instrument buffs? Yeah, alright, interesting.
And Distortion Share to allies has a storied history in our game, and we are aware of its potential. But we also think that Distortion Share is probably a peak power fantasy for support Mesmer. And we definitely wanted to try it again in Spec that's focused around it.
Oh no.
Putting it on the elite skill, where it has an
You don't know what you're unlocking, my guy.
Effects we can also weigh against its power. We'll leave it in a state that it is, you know, possible to be in our game. We definitely don't want this to be how it is before, where it's very oppressive, but we do think that, you know,
it is going to be very oppressive. I don't think they realize that.
Game and kind of elevate support Mesmer and what it's doing. It's just pretty interesting to us. So,
how likely do you think it will continue to give AoE distortion by launch?
We will see in the beta. Maybe it does the classic, you know, goes to blur and then blur is too strong. But you know, this is all, you know, betas are meant for testing. And again, this is something that we really want to do. The
perma distort. No, we won't have perma distort. Like, if I'm looking at it, like, there's probably gonna be like 1 or 2 areas where we're doing it. Like, I don't know. Like, I could see it like, oh, Greer CM, you just have one of the guys run this because like chrono elites are kind of trash. Like, if you have DPS bards, you just like, you have slams coming up, you just like distort and everyone is just fine. Like, 5-band distort is like kind of insane.
That's a super cool thing, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
I think there's definitely gonna be a lot of things like that we'll see throughout a lot of these elites.
Ceres LCM for pools. Oh fuck, you're true. Yeah, true.
Very wild ideas, you might say, and not all of them are gonna work, but we think that's what betas are for, trying out cool stuff, and sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, and we're gonna fix the.
Yeah, I could definitely see this for Ceres CM.
AoE distortion on, you know, the elite skill here is gonna break the game. It will likely go away.
And we can also see that.
But it's 75%. Wait. Sorry. Command every instrument to begin playing in the background. Duration is determined by the number of instruments you currently have. Okay. I mean, still dodging will be fine, but 1 second cost time. 75-second cooldown. It's probably going to end up, what, like 60-ish seconds? I don't think it'll work for Ceres LCM. It's too many drops.
Is gonna break the game. It will likely go away.
Yep. And we can also see that it has a performance bonus of its own that's also, I think, pretty strong. When you use this skill, you're going to bring up all your instruments for a duration.
Decima 50%, yeah.
Seconds, but that duration is going to
There's going to be like peak usage for this.
So you use it when you have no instruments up, just they'll all come up for 3 seconds, but say you had 2 instruments up and then you use it, they'll all come up for 9 seconds. So giving you value when you use it, even if you had a lot of instruments up. This is another way to use it to get like a quick crescendo, get all your instruments up for, you know, those buffs that they give, to kind of also balance out that, you know,
other places you could probably use it is going to be like Doom CM every like big dip, because you could just distort and then everyone in your entire subgroup just straight up doesn't get torment. So there's going to be uses for this that are like extremely strong. Or if you use distort, I'm pretty sure you can't get picked up by the echo while it's invuln, while you're invuln.
Distortion can be powerful, but this can also be another powerful effect that you can use for a different reason.
Perfect for me, who just wants to press all my shatters and then press the elite, get maximum duration.
So those cover all the utilities, so we can now move into the traits. I'm sure everyone's
okay. So it doesn't increase the distort duration.
And I'll do one last hover over of everything before we swap to the next spec. So I'll let you guys know when to get your print screen buttons ready for all those screenshots if you haven't been keeping up already. Let's put some random traits on so it doesn't do the flashing thing that everyone really loved the last time I did Elite Spec reviews. All right, where should we start? Minor traits?
Yep, minor traits. So I mean, the very first one is just going to be the basic minor trait that just gives you access to everything, doesn't really do anything, as it just explains what the Troubadour wants to do. But then we can move to the master minor, which is going to be harmonize.
Gain bonus outgoing healing and damage per instrument plane. Okay, yeah, we saw that.
Simple. You're kind of already saw in the tooltip. It's going to cause your instruments to give increased outgoing damage and healing. It's going to be the first kind of minor bonus for just having those instruments up. You just get stronger. Then we can move to the Grandmaster minor, Symphonic Resonance. This, again, you saw from the tooltip. Crescendo grants affected allies boons per instrument playing. So this can, again, scale the Might and Fury based on how many instruments, kind of just playing into what you want to do with Crescendo. Then both the Adept and the Master tier kind of have themes to them. They're going to have 2 instrument traits and then 1 kind of generic value trait. So we can see that if we go into the Adept tier, the first one is going to be Mayhem. Your flute, all the instrument traits will have 2 effects. The first.
Okay, so your flute now applies Torment, where your flute is playing Heal Yourself when you apply Confusion or Torment. Okay. So the flute is the Condi one, okay. Now on Scales of Scarlet Briar, okay.
One will kind of augment what the initial effect when you play the instrument does, and then another one will give you an additional bonus for having that instrument playing behind you. So we see Mayhem, and it causes your flute to additionally apply Torment, make that condition burst just a bit better, and then while the flute is playing behind yourself, you'll heal yourself when you apply Condition or Torment. This trait is aimed more towards like open world gameplay, if you want to be more of a condition duelist in competitive modes, just giving you a bit more sustain and damage for playing a more condition, Torment, Confusion Bard.
So already, first thing I'm guessing they're going to have to put in here, they're going to have to put an ICD on this. Like the amount of confusion and torment that Mesmer just does in general is a lot.
Sure. Then we get into the middle trait, where we have Hold the Note. Crescendo extends the duration of boons to nearby allies. Boon
Bro. No.
Extension is another core Mesmer fantasy that we have before on Signet of Inspiration, but now we're having it on this trait. We have to choose between some of the other effects. Again, powerful, making Crescendo even more powerful.
It has the capacity to be extremely broken.
As developers, we have to work to say the correct terms. And we get to the bottom trait where we have Syncopate. This is going to be the drum trait. When you play the drum after a delay, it'll release a quick wave where you'll also do a shorter days, just additional CC of Syncopate.
Sorry, I want to read what this does because he doesn't explain it. Releases an additional quick wave after a delay that dazes and does defiance damage. Weakening drum releases an additional quick wave after. Okay. I guess it's just an additional CC, which is nice, but like ideally you're not running this. Like you're running like trait 1 or trait 2. You're probably even like running like 500 damage is not worth having a 5-second or 3-second boon extension. So like even if you're running power DPS, you're running the second trait. If you're running the first trait.
This is going to be the drum trait. When you play the drum after a delay, it'll release a quick wave where you'll also do a shorter days, just additional CC on top of your skill, and give you a passive that when the drum is playing, you'll deal additional damage to enemies you disable. And so this.
While your drum is played, deal additional damage to foes you disable. This isn't telling us how much additional damage we're dealing to them when we disable them, unless the 414 is like the amount of damage whenever we hit them that it does. It's interesting.
It's kind of an effect that we see on traits like Bunker Down or Lightning Rod from other from other specializations in the game. This, Mesmer has no shortage of CC skills, so just gives them some extra value here. So this can be a DPS trait or also just generic support trait for more CC. Moving on to the master tier, we have the first one is the loot trait, Shredding. This augment more damage. It'll cause your loot to deal more damage per wave. So the first wave will deal normal damage, second wave will deal 25% more damage, and then the last wave will deal 50% more damage.
Deal increased strike damage while you have the loot playing, bro. 20% damage increase while your loot is playing. Holy fuck, dude. Yeah, this is so if we have this plus we have, let's say estimate we can only keep 2 instruments playing at a time. That on its own is already like what, 20 plus another 4%. It's like 8%. It's like 28% bonus power damage, just flat. 100% getting nerfed down. Like if you're running like what, a greatsword spear, this is gonna do insane damage.
So making sure you really want to hit those, especially at the later ones that come out. And as well as a passive, it's just going to give you a pretty good big damage increase while the loot is playing. So this will be a DPS spec. We'll want this trait compared to the others in this tier. It's going to be pretty important to keep your loot playing, as it's a pretty big damage modifier.
It's a massive damage modifier.
Again, the generic trait, it's going to be...
Most damage modifiers of this type are like 10%. Like 5 to 10, like is usually the amount that they stick in, but...
You know, the trait that affects your elite specs utilities, this one will augment the tails. When you use a tail, it'll grant you a note and then also recharge the corresponding instrument. So like if you use the Almora, it'll recharge the lute. If you use the Dougal one, it'll recharge the drum. And it'll also give you a lesser recharge for the heal and elite. Since they don't have a really specific instrument, it's going to recharge all of them, but just for a lesser amount.
Wait. Tails grants and notes and recharge the corresponding instruments. Okay, so does the elites regenerate all instruments then? Heal and elite tails recharge all instruments for a lesser amount. Okay, yeah, it does. Okay.
Then lastly, we can move on to Love Song. This trait is going to affect the harp. Kind of did what you saw before, where it causes the harp to get you distortion. So, you know.
I'm sorry, it gives quickness and... Sorry, oh no, I thought I saw quickness and alacrity. It just gives alacrity. Okay, whew. I was about to lose my mind. For some reason, I saw quickness there, and I was just like, bro. Alright, whew. That's fine. This is fine. Alacrity 2 seconds. Playing the harp grants you distortion. Periodically granting boons to nearby allies as the harp is playing. Okay, it only grants you distortion, so that's fine. That's fine. It only grants you distortion. It's not the end of the world. It's always done that. 2.25 seconds of alacrity. Interval is every 3 seconds. You can make the instrument play for... Oh, wait.
The Troubadour
I'll
doesn't
have to go back.
Baseline, but this trait is kind of an option for the more supportive builds that want it, to kind of price into it a little. And then PvE is also...
This is going to be hard to use to like delete rear orbs, because 2 seconds of distort is not enough.
Where you're going to be applying some alacrity and regen in all game mode, or supportive builds that want before, where it causes the harp to get you distortion. So, you know, the Troubadour doesn't have distortion baseline, but this trait is kind of an option for the more supportive builds.
Okay, yep, so the distortion is only personal.
Builds that want it, to kind of price into it a little, and then PvE.
Okay, so it does pulse the alacrity. Okay. So it's going to be an alac heal.
Alacrity and regen in all game mode, or regen in all game modes. PvE will also give alacrity, kind of getting those important boons out while also getting some sustained healing with your harp. Then we can move on to the Grandmaster traits.
You want to start in the middle though, the Grandmasters, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's not as broken as I thought it was going to be.
Response we already talked about in the blog post. When you use an instrument at the note threshold, you're going to create an after image that will play the same instrument after a delay. After image here basically means phantasm that's not a phantasm. It'll appear in the world, but it won't be targetable, and it won't give you a note when it goes away. We didn't want you to get a free note when you're already requiring notes for this. So that's why we kind of created this new type of illusion. But as you can see with what Cal's doing, as you get those notes and you play the lute, it'll spawn and then play the lute again, so it can double the CC from your drum.
Actually, let me go back. Did they show the first trait for this? No. Okay, they did.
Healing with your harp. Then we can move on to the Grandmaster traits.
You want to start in the middle though, the Grandmasters, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first one, just call and response.
When you use an instrument above the note threshold, create an after image that plays that instrument after a delay.
So we already talked about in the blog post. When you use an instrument at the note threshold, you're going to create an after image that will play the same instrument after a delay. After image here basically means phantasm that's not a phantasm. It'll appear in the world, but it won't be targetable, and it won't give you a note when it goes away. We didn't want you to get a free note when you're already, requiring notes for this. That's why we kind of created this new type of illusion. But as you can see with what Cal's doing, as you get those notes and you play the lute, it'll spawn and then play the lute again. So it can double the CC from your drum. It can double.
It'd be good for getting double healing. Yeah. But my question is going to be, does this give you like... Yeah, I could see. It's probably going to be good for like giving additional alacrity with the loot.
The healing from your harp, it can also, just get you more damage. So pretty versatile trait. We can move on to the bottom trait, Altered Chord. This trait's going to focus around crescendo. It's going to have two effects. The first one is just whenever you use an instrument, it's going to reduce the cooldown of crescendo a bit. And then it's going to have an additional effect that cares about the instrument you played right before you press crescendo. So crescendo's effects are going to be augmented based on the instrument you played last. So kind of the gameplay around this trait is you want to be using your instruments as much as possible to get more crescendos out, but it also wants you to make sure...
Crescendo prompts your last played instrument to take the spotlight, augmenting crescendo effects by playing an instrument recharges crescendo. Okay. So the loot is 5 stacks of confusion. The F1 is 25% damage. Holy fuck, dude. You have no idea how many damage percent modifiers do you count on this? 20% baseline, plus 25% from Altered Chord, plus 4% per instrument playing. Like, this is almost hitting up to like 100% bonus damage.
That when you're about...
Okay, maybe not. I'm exaggerating. It's probably like you're probably gonna be like 58%. They will lower this 100%. A 10-second buff.
The crescendo, so you can keep an instrument to get the right bonus. Again, giving you kind of varied utility from this. You can get more healing, more CC. Just depends on how you want to play. And lastly,
yeah, this here is going to be the DPS trait, 100%.
We can go to the top Grandmaster, which is Fortissimo. This one's kind of going to try and alter how you use crescendo in general. The first effect it has is going to give you an attribute bonus for having your instruments up, and this stacks. So if you have 2 instruments...
Okay, so to get the additional attribute increase, you need to have this trait. Okay, so you don't get the additional attributes unless you have this trait. But is 10% attributes worth a 25% damage buff?
Instruments, it'll be 10%. If you have all 4, 20%, that's a pretty big number. And it's going to cause crescendo when you use it to get you a note per second for duration. So right now it'll give you 6 notes pretty rapidly. So instead of, normally you want to use crescendo as your finisher, you want to use it as your opener here. So you're going to crescendo, then it's going to give you a lot of notes, you're going to get your instruments. This gives you a lot of note generation, so you can have, have the possibility of having 3 or 4 instruments up for a high duration to get value out of that attribute increase.
Definitely set up the elite pretty well as well.
I think that covers it for the traits. I mentioned before
no,
talking about...
like you're probably running this trait here if you're a support, but the 5% attribute increase is kind of insane. I'm very scared. I think you can play this as a Selly build and it's going to be disgustingly broken. Yeah, this is like additional attributes are just going to be like insane.
Troubadour and Chronomancer, fitting them into supports, but kind of readjusting where things live. I think while we're doing traits can show off like an example of that is Bountiful Disillusionment. Before stability was put on the distortion slot, and it was pretty powerful, especially with Chronomancer's ability to double that and things being instant cast. So we're shifting around the bonuses back a little, putting regen back on that F4 slot.
Stability will now be on crescendo. That's going to be kind of rough, actually. Might's on the F1, Vigor's on the F2, Fury is on the F3. Honestly, I wish like that these two were swapped.
To kind of give Troubadour better access to that and have specific things that the Troubadour can be better at than Chronomancer, and in turn, hopefully going back in Chronomancer and strengthening up its identity that we had to, you know, take away.
Let me re-listen to this.
Then Chronomancer, and in turn, hopefully going back in Chronomancer and strengthening up its identity that we had to, you know, take away. We had to remove a bit of it when we added support things. It was just very powerful, especially with C-Split. So the goal is that we can put more things in Troubadour's kit so that Chronomancer can be what it wants to be again.
Bro, they're gonna nerf the shit out of Chrono. They're gonna fuck it, dude. Dude, I bet you when they were making this build, they were like, we need to fuck Chronomancer, like now. Bro, they want to fuck Chrono so hard. It's so blatant.
Again, Chrono will still be viable as a support build, right?
Yes, very much so.
Won't be able to do all the things that it is able to do.
It'll still be viable, but it won't be able to do all the things that it's currently able to do.
Yeah. That kind of covers it for the
anything else.
I think, you know, hover over all those traits, make sure people got.
I can hit it with the
Screenshots,
ban hammer
screenshots.
hard,
We'll do all
or the
traits
nerf hammer.
and all the skills. Surely Taylor will fill the air as I hover over these things with his new and improved microphone.
Might just need more water.
Probably.
The instrument, leading up these skills, you can be your own concert, be your own be your own conductor. That's kind of the initial idea that went behind all of these skills.
You're almost done. Could probably go way faster. You know the chat.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the way that it's currently gonna play is it's probably gonna be like the DPS will be like middle top as like the power one, like either bottom or top. Like depending on whether or not like getting the additional stats is worth a 25% damage buff, which I'm highly doubtful of.
That is all on top of these screenshots.
Yeah.
But it might be because of all the
pixel. Go back.
but like the value of that additional percentage might be less because you're getting the additional percentage on each instrument cost, that it might be worth getting more like note generation and the additional stats.
Back in the pod.
Book goes to lore.
So set up on the next character. We'll be showing off Luminary next. Let's see
Have
here.
your opening statements on the Luminary.
Opening statements. Yeah, obviously you guys saw the video of Luminary. We have kind of the what do we call? We call it like a brazier. There's been so many words that we've called like this power source of the Luminary internally.
I think Brazier is probably the coolest
Just wanna make sure
one
I get the right
that you could
one.
use.
But we kind of have this like guardian elite spec, for lack of a better terminology, because we're gonna see a lot of things that really play into like that guardian protective like playstyle. And we've kind of seen a lot of different shifts with like the Willbender being a lot more mobility and
No, they haven't.
Ranged character, Firebrand obviously being like, super
Ali, they
powerful
haven't.
support kit. They're all like kind of adjacent to what Guardian typically is and thematically is, but the Luminary kind of leans a lot heavier into just normal Guardian themes while really elevating them, because we saw in the video we had like the Radiant Shroud.
Yeah, well, they're
Here, so we can go
talking.
back.
I'm gonna grab.
Radiant Shroud giving access to like these weapons of light and flame to the Luminary is kind of this just like really guardian for lack of a better word. But we can see here that this wasn't quite clear in the blog post, and some people were kind of confused. It seemed like we do still have the core virtues here available to Luminary, and that was a pretty deliberate decision as we were thinking about like, well, we knew we want to do the Shroud pretty early and have like access to different weapons. There's the question of whether or not we should do like Luminary specific virtues as well, because we obviously have like Dragon Hunter gets its own virtues, Willbender gets its own flavor of the virtues, Firebrand gets its virtues with tomes. But the core virtues are actually play pretty well into what this spec is trying to do. We have like a lot of that protective, defensive, supporty Guardian here on top of like the more bruisery, aggressive versions of Guardian, and you know like Virtue of Resolve, Virtue of Courage. These are just like really skills that fit really well into this style of play. And there's some additional virtue hooks that we'll see once we get into the traits, but it's going to play really well with the virtues trait line. And so we felt pretty good about just having the core virtues alongside the new flashing mechanic of the Radiant Shroud. And this is something that we covered pretty in detail in the blog, but I'm just going to reiterate for everyone. The Radiant Shroud, the idea here is that it's like a different take on, say, Death Shroud or, Shadow Shroud. It's kind of closer to like Photon Forge, which a lot of people realized, where there's not like a gating resource. Holosmith obviously has heat. The difference here is that the usage of the Shroud skills is what's going to be affecting the cooldown. So anytime it's available, you can just go into Radiant Shroud. And we can just show that off real quick. You can see that the power source kind of gets consumed to apply like the Radiant Aura here and really source the power of all of these weapons. Is kind of the idea. So that'll go away when you're in Shroud, it'll come back when you're out of Shroud. But when we go into Shroud, we can see that the base cooldown here, if we don't do anything, it's going to be 5 seconds. And that's also going to be true of the first weapon that you use. The base cooldown is still going to be 5 seconds, and then it's going to go up by 5 seconds each time you use an additional weapon skill. The way it's explained is slightly different because it actually reduces the cooldown, but
This is so confusing, but I understand what he's saying.
And most Shrouds, have that 10-second cooldown, so if you go and use a couple of weapons, you'll have access to more of that normal Shroud cooldown, but there's more space to have a really big burst of power, because we see here going in, and we'll cover all these skills again, but come in, use the hammer. That's going to be your main damage-focused weapon. And like the staff's going to be a little bit more supportive. It's going to create a symbol on the ground, have some healing attached to it as well. So a lot of these things do have like some situational value. Some of them are going to be the ones you just always want to press. You'll always go in, use that button, get that value. These skills do still have cooldowns, so you can't just, go in, press the shield block, leave, come back in 5 seconds, press the shield block again. But you kind of have a decision point every time that you go into Shroud of how long do I want to stay in here, how many weapons do I want to utilize, and then that's going to affect like the next time you can go back in. So there's definitely be cases where you just want to pop in, use the hammer, maximize your damage, leave, and then come back 5 seconds later. Maybe you want to use the block is a situation that came up, so you want to have better access to that. But fundamentally, it's a resourceless Shroud that the resource is, I guess, the skills themselves, because the more you use the skills, the more the cooldown increases.
It's probably not going to get reduced by alacrity. Oh no, it will get reduced by alacrity.
Real quick, one extra thing here we're going to see is that there's a few extra buffs getting applied from the minor traits, so we can cover those real quick. The first one is a buff that we're calling the Luminary's Blessing. This is just a small strike damage reduction that's going to be applied to you and nearby allies every time you equip a radiant weapon, so not the flip skills, but any of the base skills. And then there's also going to be this passive attached to each weapon from the radiant.
Did he just say it gives it to you and your allies? Like you just give your allies damage reduction? Okay.
The Armaments Grandmaster Minor that in this case we see with the hammer. It's damage. You get a buff that says increased strike damage to crowd controlled foes, immobilized foes. And that's going to persist for a bit of time after you exit Shroud. So when you go in and you're going to be using multiple weapons, if I'm more of a damage-focused build, I'm going to make sure that I want to end on the hammer, because that's going to give me that lingering bonus that is the increased damage. The auto attack is going to be a similar, it's just going to be like kind of a burst of energy around you. The interesting...
Get a burst of energy. This affects... which changes based on the radiant weapon you have equipped. The hammer just gives a damage increase. Pog champ. The sword is just like vulnerability, no one cares. So it's pretty much just going to be the hammer that is used. The staff is regen. And the shield is resolution.
Thing here is that it's going to be a different effect based off which weapon you have equipped. So if you have the sword, you're going to get a little vulnerability on top. Hammer's going to be the most damage. Shield's going to give some resolution. Staff, you're going to give some regen. And potentially a little bit of like a small heal attached to the more.
So I'm going to tell you now, they're going to have to adjust what the sword does, because this is so trash. Like, dude, vulnerability, especially on Guardian. No, Guardian does alright. But it's just like, it's not like... it's not enough.
Get a little vulnerability on top. Hammer's going to be the most damage. Shield's going to give some resolution. Staff, you're going to give some regen. And potentially a little bit of like a small heal attached to the more defensive ones. And then the bit of damage attached to the more aggressive ones. So we can go into these a little bit more in depth now, starting off with the Dazzling Hammer. This is, again, your most offensive slot. You see kind of starting with the overhead slam. All of these start with what we vaguely call an equip skill, where I perform an attack while equipping the weapon, and that's going to flip the slot over into the follow-up skill, Shining Spin, which is just going to be an AoE damage skill that deals increased damage against disabled foes. That's going to be a pretty common theme. We'll see that in a couple other places as well, where this spec's really going to be looking for those moments of opportunity where you're going to land an immobilize or land a crowd control and then really be able to unleash a lot of damage. Next
He's
up,
talking about in
Luminous
PvP,
Staff.
which we don't
So
really
that
care
staff,
about.
It's going to give you a healing. We'll cover all the passives again once we get into the trait. So it's going to be an outgoing healing buff. The idea is you slam the staff into the ground. This is going to create a resolution symbol, and it's also going to grant protection to your allies when you use the skill initially. It's going to give support, and the resolution symbol is going to go out, and that's going to flip over into restorative glow. This is going to be a AoE heal, AoE condition removal, and it's also going to give a bit of that strike damage redirection that we've seen in a few places before. It's going to be a little bit smaller, 10% redirected from your allies to your.
Okay, they were smart. They added it will stop if you fall below 50% health because, dude, I am just waiting for you to accidentally double tap this at the wrong time and you just instantly blow yourself the fuck up, dude.
So, this one has kind of a safety valve built into it where anytime that you take damage, while this effect is active, if you fall underneath 50% health, it's going to remove itself from you, so you won't be able to just, one-shot yourself by applying this buff to your allies in like a world environment. But it's just going to be like an extra layer of reduction.
I think it shouldn't. I think it shouldn't have the safety. I think it's so funny when you just one-shot yourself, okay? I think that's great, dude. Like, hey, bro, you've got to roleplay, okay? You got to take the damage, you just one-shot yourself, fuck it. Makes it more intentional.
Take a look at the sword. Let's get some close-ups on these weapons actually real quick because these look super cool. Our team really crushed it. I mean, they crushed it with like all the specs, but I'm just really a big fan of like the art that came together for the Luminary. See the hammer there, the staff here. Just looks super sweet. We'll see a lot more of these models on some of the other skills as well. Stay tuned. Next up, we're gonna look at the sword. We start with Gleaming Blade. This is gonna be a bit of mobility. We leap in, do initial slash, do some cripple, do some vulnerability. That's gonna
yeah, exactly, dude. Like, remember when Gaz used it and we just one-shot himself?
Movement impaired foes, so a pretty natural combo. You leap in, apply cripple, and then you potentially land and immobilize, which can then play into like your hammer CC, hammer damage. You do equip both the sword and the shield anytime you use either of the sword or the shield. Just because it looks way cooler. Like, it just looks way cooler to have a sword and a shield equipped than to just have a sword or just have a shield. But you will only get the passive of the skill you actually use. So here we get the sword passive, which is going to be an increased movement speed. So this is, again, that more mobility-focused slot. You can leap in, leap away, and then get a little extra burst of speed to chase down your enemy or run away from your enemy. And then last up, we're going to take a look at the Radiant Bulwark. There's just going to be a channeled block. Nothing too crazy, but it's also going to give an AoE Aegis to nearby allies anytime.
Bro, dude, we're gonna 100% be bringing this for demo CM, dude. We can just use this shield. No longer needed to bring something for it. Will Cringer, was it mobile enough?
Use that skill. So a little bit more of that situational, shareable Aegis to just be that powerful defensive moment. And that's going to follow up into the Brilliant Slam. There's just going to be a quick shield bash. That's going to daze. Pretty short duration daze. It's going to be more of that interrupt value. Just another layer of crowd control to potentially set up your hammer skills or your future skills. So that's the Shroud mechanic. And I think I covered all the things that I wanted to cover, so we can hop into the utility skills next. And I'll come back and do another pass on all of these tooltips at the end as well. So starting things off with the Resolute Stance, kind of
I'm curious if you're gonna get like buff from having your forge available, like what you've got with the other virtues, but it might trigger some virtue stuff. Might be interesting to see what happens.
A common theme, but not a theme that is true of all the stances, is that a lot of the stances are a bit more unique in what the stance effect is. Here you see that Resolute Stance is when you remove conditions from yourself, you get a little bit of extra healing. And the idea is that all these stances have some sort of AoE component attached to them as well. So when I activate this, it's going to do an AoE heal and AoE condition removal. And the effect that happens in an area, whether it's an offensive or a defensive one, we'll see a couple different flavors. But this is going to be playing into that stance effect, because I'm going to apply the stance to myself that says heal when I remove conditions for myself, and then do a pulse of AoE healing and condition removal, which will then trigger the stance, assuming you had conditions on you. So you get like kind of one trigger for free, and then the rest of your kit is going to allow you to get additional triggers. Obviously, there's a lot of Condi removal in the rest of Guardian's kits, other skills, other traits that can give you a lot more healing pulses if that's something that you're interested in. You can really kind of level up your healing skill through that. Next up, we have Stalwart Stance. This one's a little bit more straightforward because we kind of put one of the more powerful AoE components on it. There's going to be an AoE stun break for yourself and allies. Also going to grant AoE Aegis again, so another really powerful button.
Dude, think about this. You're now going to have AoE Aegis on 2 skills on Guardian. You're going to have it on Retreat, and you're going to have it on this stance. And this stance also reduces the damage they take. That is insanely strong.
Especially for support, but, you know, personal stun break, personal Aegis, and then that personal damage reduction. Just a pretty potent defensive tool.
Oh, it's personal damage reduction. My bad.
As mentioned, you know, this one doesn't have quite as much flavor, but is just that solid, stalwart defensive tool that is also pretty valuable to support builds. I'm actually going to skip over this one real quick. We'll come back to it. That's one of the more offensive focused. Let's cover the 2 defensive focused ones first. Next up, we have Valorous Stance. The stance here is that you heal allies when you grant them boons. So this is pretty similar to like altruistic healing, but instead of every time you apply a boon to anyone, you heal yourself. It's anytime you apply a boon to someone, you heal them. So this obviously does include yourself. The number hasn't been balanced yet, so the 37, probably a little bit on the low end, but we do want this to be like a pretty powerful effect. It obviously gives stability and protection, these powerful defensive tools.
Okay, so you can run triple stab now. So you've got Stance Stab, you've got Hallowed Ground Stab, and you have... what's it called? Stand Your Ground Stab. Great. This is...
Sorry, I got distracted by something else. But we see protection, stability, and then that's going to be healing its allies as well. I'm going to deal some damage to this. We see a bunch of heal pulses coming out, and then, I mean, you guys know how good altruistic healing is with like Empower, right? So you can now use Valorous Stance, use Empower. That's potentially a lot of AoE healing, in addition to a little bit of stability, a little bit of protection. This one's not a stun break because we feel like it has the potential to be strong enough. Like, assuming the healing number is right, this skill will be powerful enough that it doesn't need to be the stun break. And, you know, maybe you just want to play it alongside Stand Your Ground as well, get even more stability. There's potentially a lot of stability access with this spec that we'll see as we get into the traits as well. But just really leaning into like those powerful defensive boons that Guardian is so well known for. Next up, we have Effulgent Stance. This one's kind of a mix where it has some defense and some offense. So the first thing we're seeing here is that it's going to give some AoE barrier, AoE light aura. And then it's going to give us a buff that is basically a charge up counter for this explosion that happens at the end. So we see the kind of this swirling aura. And this is going to stack up anytime an enemy strikes you or anytime you strike an enemy. And that's going to increase the damage of this final explosion. And if you reach the stat cap, so it's like there's a maximum of 10 stacks. If you hit 10 enemies or get hit 10 times or a combination of any of those things, this big explosion at the end is also going to do some daze. Probably not super likely in a 1v1 situation. Guardian does have a lot of multi-hit skills, so it is definitely possible, but more expected that you're going to get that maximum value in like these situations where you are able to beat multiple.
Nah, let's be honest. It's 100% hitting 10 stacks. Literally, you're going to have Greatsword. Like, you got your symbol down, you're spinning, it's hitting max caps. Dude, stop the cap. You're not going to hit 10 easy, bro.
Enemies, but the baseline of the skill of...
At least in PvE.
Barrier, AoE Light Aura, which will be relevant once we get to the straight line as well.
At least in PvE. 100% going to be hitting that pretty regularly.
We have the Piercing Stance. This one's going to be, again, a bit more offensive and a bit more crowd control focused. So we're going to see it's just a quick AoE daze. Kind of lash out with this burst of weaponry. And the stance itself is going to be another damage bonus against crowd controlled or immobilized enemies. So we see, you know, short duration days, not going to give you as much opportunity to unleash like a huge burst of damage. Maybe your next skill is going to line up with this 1.5 second days.
Increase strike damage against crowd controlled or immobilized enemies. Question, is this going to work against Defiant foes? So if this is like baseline working against Defiant foes, it's like a 6 second like burst window, which is going to be insane. Yeah, I could see this being very strong.
Then obviously it's going to give you bonus damage off of any of the other crowd control you're going to be inflicting with the skills. And as usual, skills with or enemies with Defiance bars are always going to be susceptible to this, or always reward you with this bonus damage. And last up, we have Daring Advance. This is, I like to call this one kind of a loose interpretation of the stance skill type because it's more of a mobility skill. We're going to leap to an area, and it's not going to give you in particular a buff, but it's going to create this area of power that is arguably the stance, where this is going to be...
Leap into an area, tether nearby enemies, and empower allies. Tethered enemies are stunned if they move beyond the area threshold. They need to increase the AoE size for this. This is a bit small. Like, oh, dude, this is kind of strong.
Applying Might, Fury. It's going to be pulsing Luminary's Blessing as well, so we're going to see, like, Make sure I'm not going to die when I do this. But we can see, like, as this buff gets reapplied, you're getting that healing pulse because it's anytime that it expires in any way, whether it is by timeout or by refresh. That's also relevant for the Shroud, because if you are using those skills back to back to back, you will get that refresh on Luminary's Blessing, which will trigger the healing. So this is a pretty powerful, like, area. A lot of defense and offense attached to here. We're also going to see that if we leap in and we strike enemies, it's going to do a tether on these enemies. That it's a little different from like the DH tether or the Spellbreaker tether. This one is going to be just a stun if you get too far away, but the range threshold is a little bit shorter. So the idea is that, you know, the stun is a little bit harder to avoid, but it's not quite as powerful as getting pulled back. And it will, again, set up some of your skills that care about striking crowd-controlled foes.
Bro, it says distance from the Guardian, not distance out of that AoE. Okay, that's interesting.
And I'm just going to use this skill a few times because the art is fantastic. I love this area. It's like the arena of weapons. You are free. It's not a ring of warding naturally, but you have the tether attached. You can just walk out of it. You might get stunned, but it looks very cool, very threatening. And it's also a light field, which is cool because you can get some light aura. We also have the light field on the staff skill, radiant staff skill. Light aura will be relevant as we talk about the traits here in just a second, but I'm going to take a quick break for water. Are we someone who remembers back in the day?
Okay, so this one doesn't have artwork, actually.
Minor trait that explains the progression mechanics and those things. But starting with the traits that actually do things, we've kind of seen both of these already from using the Shroud skills. Light's Gift, this is going to be a little bit of extra vitality buff, and then this is going to be the source of Luminary's Blessing. Every time you equip a Radiant weapon, it will do this to allies in the area.
Gain vitality, grant Luminary's Blessing to allies when you equip a blessing. So increase strike reduce strike damage and heal when it expires. Yeah, the reduced strike damage might get nerfed. Because this is like separate from protection. I know it gets like, doesn't stack additively. It stacks like diminishingly, but like still. It's like as good as having like an additional protection.
This duration is going to be a little bit shorter in competitive modes. Here we see, you know, still needs a tuning pass. Right now it's 6 seconds. It's going to be about 3 seconds in competitive modes. But again, the idea is you get this kind of short duration of strike damage reduction, and then when that ends, it's going to give you a little bit of healing. That's obviously true for all of the allies that you affect with it as well. And then we see the bonuses here from Radiant Armaments. Every time you, or while you have an equipped Radiant weapon, you're going to get a weapon. You're going to get a passive bonus based off which weapon you have equipped.
This bonus lingers for a period of time after exiting Shroud. So Radiant augments, just the hammer is increased strike damage. Nice. To controlled or immobilized foes. That's probably going to work against defiant foes, so it's going to be broken. Radiant augments, healing increase to others, 15%. That's not bad. And then the shield reduces incoming strike damage from nearby enemies. Yeah, it's pretty pog. Like, I could definitely see you're probably going to be using the healing increase one or the damage decrease one as a healer.
Time after exiting Shroud. So we see again here the hammer. Bonus damage against crowd-controlled and immobilized foes. Staff giving you that increased outgoing healing. Sword with the increased movement speed. And shield giving you that incoming strike damage reduction against nearby enemies. Moving into the adept traits, we have Shimmering Stances. Here we have the stance trait for the Spec. Obviously, we've seen some stances that affect allies, some that affect enemies. So stances that affect allies will also get protection bonus here, and stances that affect enemies will inflict blind. Some of the stances do both, so you will get kind of both of these bonuses attached to those stances. Pretty powerful trait, assuming you have like a decent number of stances on your bar.
Okay. It's alright.
Next up we have Shining Restoration. This is kind of the first of the middle row of traits that are going to be light aura adjacent. And so here, this one's pretty straightforward. When you use a healing skill, get an extra light aura. Light aura in itself, you know, increased Condi damage reduction. Not the most exciting, but not too weak, and we're going to see a lot of light aura synergy as we move down the trait line.
You want my honest opinion? I feel like they should rework light aura to do something else. Like, the condition damage reduction is kind of like meh with the existence of resolution. They did it with dark aura. They should do something different. And you can't put burn on it because, well, you know, we have fire aura. So potentially healing, like just like a pulsing heal, or like every time you're hit, like heal you for an amount, I feel like would be good. But that could be broken.
Next up we have Persistent Blessing. This is going to give you a quick refresh of Luminary's Blessing when you exit Shroud. So you know, go in, use all the weapons that you want to, and then as you're exiting Shroud, you're just going to get a nice little refresh on that duration of that damage reduction. And
okay, the Dark Aura rework, Slipher, I don't think it was for Thief. It was clearly for Revenant, okay? Because everyone loves Revenant, okay? Okay, so don't pretend it was for Thief. No one plays Thief, okay? Revenant is clearly the superior class.
get an extra healing trigger as well.
Even though it's
So
got the
for that,
worst play
you can use the
stats
trait
in the
if you don't have
game.
a bunch of stances equipped for Shimmering Stances. Next up, we have Steadfast Recovery. This is a personal sustain trait. It's going to give you a pulsing health regen if you have Protection or Resolution. Starts off with a smaller number than other things that we've seen, like Rugged Growth, for example, because it is going to count twice if you have both.
Regenerate health while affected by resolution or protection. So this doesn't look like this affects allies, so it's kind of bad. It's probably like a personal survivability. Like if you want to make a healer, you could make this affect allies, would be pretty strong.
These boons. So if I have Protection, I get this 120 heal pulse that obviously scales with healing power and all that jazz. But if I have Prot and Resolution, then I'm going to get twice as much healing every pulse. Obviously vulnerable to boon removal, but if you are maintaining Protection and Resolution, you can potentially get a lot of sustain from this trait. Next up, we have Purging Light. Every time that you apply a light aura to yourself, you're going to do an AoE condition removal for you and your allies. We're still trying to find the right balance on this one. If one is enough with kind of the amount of light aura that's added to this spec. Obviously, Core Guardian has a lot of light aura sources as well. But now we're adding like more light fields, more elite finishers, a lot of extra triggers of light aura. So this might not be strong enough at 1. It could be 2, or maybe it could be 2 for yourself, 1 for allies. You know, there's a lot of knobs here that we can balance this trait with. But the idea is grant light aura, remove conditions.
It's probably going to get buffed to 2.
And last up, we have kind of more of a damage focused right here. This is going to be Empowered Armaments. So every time that you equip a Radiant weapon, it's going to give you kind of this duration stacking damage buff that we've seen on a number of specs and professions at this point. But every time that you use a Radiant weapon, you'll get additional duration of this. So this is another incentive to use more weapons each time that you go into Shroud. Obviously, Hammer is going to be the main damage focus. Staff is going to give you that symbol, which will be relevant for symbol traits, and you know, also be a reasonable amount of damage once we get the number right. And Sword's obviously going to have a decent amount of damage attached to it as well. So there is already some incentives to use more weapons, but here's another incentive to use more weapons is to.
So you're probably going to go in, use the sword, then the hammer, and leave, is what I'm guessing is this going to be played as. So it's like you get 12 seconds, right? And then you're at least ending on a hammer, so you keep the hammer buff.
I'm going to start in the center. That seems to be a trend for this stream, starting with the middle Grandmaster Major trait. This is the Sovereign of Light. It's kind of a play on the King of Fire's trait that Berserker has. In name and in functionality. So we're going to see another light aura trigger here that if I have this trait equipped, when I enter Shroud, I'm going to get a light aura. And then all of your Luminary skills, so that will be Radiant Shroud skills and Stance skills, will detonate that light aura, and that's going to do some AoE damage, it's going to do AoE healing, and it's going to give some AoE resolution as well. We can see we pop in, use a hammer skill. We're going to get a little bit of a light aura explosion there.
Okay, so every time you gain light aura, you explode it. It's interesting.
And you know, it's going to be...
But with the weapon skills...
Healing. Resolution, pretty relevant for all the Guardian traits that love resolution. So an interesting trait if you really want to lean into like that, kind of like a middle ground bruisery playstyle. We're going to have some damage, some defense, and some support. Potentially an interesting trait selection. If you're going to be more of that boon support...
Oh, here we go, here we go. So I'm going to be honest, I don't like the fact that that healing / detonation one for resolution isn't there in one of the middle traits, because now it's kind of like you don't really have a middle trait that's worth running as a healer.
Then Illuminating Inspiration is going to be the trait that you want to take. Here we see grant boost to nearby allies when you use a virtue skill, and then reduce the recharge of your virtue skills when you equip a Radiant weapon. So this obviously is going to be...
Reduce the recharge of virtue skills. Sorry, give me like 2 seconds. I want to quickly see what virtue skills we have. Meditation. Okay, so that's just the tomes. Thought it was going to be something different.
All of your virtue skills, granting alacrity in PvE, and it's going to be something a little bit different in competitive modes. But then you can go into Shroud and use some Radiant weapons, get some cooldown reduction, and that's going to then give you access to like more boons.
And you can use the virtues well in Shroud. Okay.
You know, reducing the recharge time of your virtues is even better when you have other traits that care about virtues, say from the virtue straight line, potentially a really strong trait for
The
like,
light aura.
guardians that, you know, that's more indomitable courage procs, more absolute resolve procs, more of the just all the boons, all the triggers from virtue traits if you have this trait equipped and utilize all of the skills in your shroud.
This is going to be so
And last up,
broken.
we have kind of the flip of the alternative to recharging your virtues by using your weapon skills. Now you're going to recharge your weapon skills by using your virtues, and this one's intended to be a bit more offensive focused. I mean, obviously recharging staff is going to be good for support builds, but you're going to lose access to some of those boons and some of those extra virtue triggers. This is intended to be more like a bursty trait where using virtues are going to give you a full recharge of the radiant weapon skill. So here we see that if you use justice, that's going to fully recharge your hammer. So I can go in, use hammer, use justice, use hammer again, and that's not going to... The cooldown is still going to be based off each unique weapon that you use. So if I go in and I use hammer twice, or even 3 times if I use, say, renewed focus and recharge my justice and then do it all again, that's still only going to count as 1 weapon used for the sake of the cooldown reduction. But you can see that we can get some pretty bursty moments if we go in, use all these skills, recharge them all with the virtues, and then, you know, we can do it all again with renewed focus if we really want to. So you are the master at arms. You get to use all the weapons really as much as you want.
Dude, the amount of stability that you're going to be able to give with the recharging of virtue skills is actually going to be insane. Like, because you got the trait, right, where you get stability and stun break allies with the F3. So it's going to be like an insane amount of just like stability that this class is going to be able to put out, considering the fact you can run stand your ground, hallowed ground, and the stance that gives stability. This class is going to be like the king of stability.
But significantly more than builds with different traits, and you know, pretty fun to play with, and potentially very powerful DPS trait. So I think I got through everything. So we're just going to do some hovering of things for just a minute here. We'll go over all the traits again, and then over all of the skills again. What do you think about Luminary, Taylor?
You know, while you're doing that, you know, question, what roles do you think, you know, the Spec will see in the game? Like, how would it play in PvE or maybe Worldly World?
And with the Chrono nerf, they are back on top.
Healer?
Bro, it's not gonna be back on top. Chrono's top because of its utility skills, not because of how good it is at healing. The fact too that it has access to improved alacrity is also what makes Chrono so like oppressive, right? Because it's like the alacrity strength is like improved as well, even if it's reduced, but you have a way to apply extra alacrity to yourself, so you don't even feel the drawback of having like the alacrity being improved, right? Ugh, can't even fucking English, dude.
Close up of the utility skills, healing skill, and elite skill. Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun traits, especially in the Grandmaster slot. Like, obviously, recharging cooldowns is always really fun and really powerful and really scary, but we see, like, a couple of...
It's very scary.
And even, like, I've been having a lot of fun internally, I think, with Sovereign of Light, just leading into, like, the full... How many light auras can we get? How many times can we detonate light aura? Just, like, a lot of burst healing, a lot of burst damage. It's pretty fun to play with.
Okay.
A lot of yeah, I can just talk a bit about, you know, background of the Galeshot.
And then what?
Some intro to it.
We're waiting for him.
So if you read the blog post, you know that the Galeshot, it is kind of an archer spec. You're going to get access to this new weapon called the Cyclone Bow. If you talk about design goals, part of Ranger's identity is definitely being a bow user with marksmanship. I think a lot of people, when they first start playing the game, some people like to gravitate towards our archer characters, and so Ranger is kind of that for them. But then when they got to elite specs, there wasn't really one that elevated that fantasy. So that's what the Galeshot's trying to do, is kind of be that signpost spec for if you really like playing archers in games. There's a lot of archers in our game, but Galeshot is like the one that's highly focused on that fantasy. So, you know, part of the Tyrian Alliance, you know, the Tengu are teaching Rangers how to control wind
triple
magic and be even
bows
better with their bow. So you're going to see a lot of mix.
Well, I mean, you say that, but like, if you think about it in like endgame PvE, no one's using bow. Like, none of like the builds at the moment use bow, apart from like maybe you're like pre-casting a bow 5, a longbow 5, or unless you're Condi Soul Beast, I think is the only like ranger spec that actually uses bow at the moment.
Of like the archery, the wind magic, and some bird aesthetics, because that's always fun. So that's kind of like the initial idea and why we decided to go with the Galeshot. So yeah, now we're in game, we can talk about what it is. I think when you first look at the
Okay, so first comments from what I see here is okay. Wait, but he's not in combat.
You see a new F5 skill where you go into the bow and so you have these feathers that are your arrows. These are kind of going to be your resource for the spec. Continuing with the UI, when Cal will use the skill, you see it takes an arrow and you have a meter where you can see the time until your next arrow. So you're not guessing. You have the recharge there. And another thing you can notice is that Cal doesn't have no recharge on, but the bow doesn't have a recharge. The bow is something that you can always have the option to go into. This is something that we felt was important with the Archer Fantasy, is the ability to always have something to do at range. So the auto attack also doesn't cost any of the arrows. So wherever you are, you're able to auto attack with the bow. Obviously, this is very strong. Competitive mode is going to keep that number probably low, but in like instant PvE fights, the boss jumps away, you always have the option to swap to your bow.
Yeah, in instance PvE, this is going to be like very good for it, provided the damage is quite like good, right?
I mean, that's just one thing that Spec brings that's kind of different from what we just made, a normal weapon that's gated by weapon swap, is that, you could have a longbow, but even there are times where you swap to your other weapon set that you don't have anything to do at range, so that's kind of a gap that the Spec is hoping to fill.
It's okay, because you should just swap to your short bow from your longbow, and then...
Bro, dude, this is literally just gonna be like, if this build is strong, it's probably gonna be like double melee weapon sets. And then you're popping into your F5 when like you're at range or when you want to do like the burst.
Make sure you have bear pets as well. That's the key.
And then
Who's memeing?
So going on to kind of like the mechanics of the bow is that as you see Cal use skills, he'll get this buff on his bar that's called Wind Force. Wind Force is kind of, you build stacks of it up to your payoff. If you hit 5 Wind Force, you'll unlock what we call the finale skill Hawkeye. That's intended to do a lot of damage and hope for you to cycle through your skills. It plays a lot like a kit, and we've seen through a lot of gameplay, especially like Engineer, sometimes Firebrand, with these like no cooldown abilities, is that the optimal playstyle is to go and press the good button, then leave. We wanted the Cyclone bow to have more interactive play than that, so that's what Hawkeye is intended for. You want to like wait for your cooldowns, wait to have enough arrows to go into this kit to get that big payoff, but you always have the option to go into the kit if you need to use that evade backwards, or you just want to auto attack some. Maybe you have enough arrows that you can do a few blusters before you go back to your weapon. So it's trying to aim to be fluid and always have options to support this ranged play style no matter what's happening around you.
All right.
So
talk through the skills.
Talk about the actual skills.
What is bluster that you just mentioned?
Bluster is the 2 skill. This is kind of your bread and butter skill. Has a really low cooldown, costs 1 arrow, so you're going to be weaving it in a lot. Just quick charge up, then quick burst. Pretty simple. Nothing too crazy about it.
Can he move while casting this?
It's going to be Fleeting Zephyr, your defensive. Wanted to make sure the weapon has at least like 1 defensive in its kit. So you're going to do a leap back and evade. That's always useful. But you're also going to release a gust of wind, and that wind is going to be a pretty big projectile destruction. Part of being good at range is being able to trade in range. So if there's another person that's shooting at you with a projectile, you have the ability to use that to stop a pretty big important like incoming attack, and also use it to protect your allies if you see a lot of projectiles incoming. The next skill is going to...
That's kind of strong.
This is going to be a ground target. You shoot arrows up, and then after a delay, they rain down, and it's going to immobilize people. It's going to do some okay damage, but hoping the immobilize is the main aspect to kind of lead into your other skills. You can Quarry's Peril, then hit them with a Bluster, or when we get into the 5 skill, also use
yeah, this is going to be annoying, because there's no ways to like avoid this.
Big part of every world that we know, so we want to make sure they...
Yeah, dude, the Ranger in World v World is literally just going to be like the immob. Like, you're literally just going to run max Condi duration, like fucking... The elites, the muddy terrain, the Quarry's Peril, dude. Okay.
Have ways to interact that aren't just through normal projectiles. And then we can get on to the 5 skill, which is like kind of another capstone skill. Supersonic Arrow. It's going to be very strong. It's going to take a lot of arrows, but hopefully worth the payoff. You're going to stand still in channel and then shoot a really fast arrow. I think I set this projectile to some insane number. It's almost instant, basically. It's going to do pretty heavy damage, CC, unblockable pierce. It's a very good skill, and one that if you're fighting a Galeshot, you want to definitely see coming.
So it's an arrow that launches the skill, additional wind force. Did you say... Okay, it is unblockable, bro. Wait. But is it reflectable?
And evade. There's also
probably not.
You can line up with Quarry's Peril and then use the supersonic arrow. And part of the payoff for being such a high arrow cost is that it's also going to give you 2 of those wind force. So you can get to your Hawkeye even faster if you choose to use it. Then just talk about Hawkeye. It's intended to be a pretty high damaging skill. The payoff for using all these weapons or all these skills while you're in the kit. And its functionality is basically you're going to use it on a target, it's going to lock onto that target, and then shoot 5 arrows at them, and then it's going to look at if there's any nearby enemies to them and shoot 3 arrows to them. So it's potentially a lot of arrows if you have a lot of people near them, and kind of like a cleave arrow ability. So it's kinda
That's
like the
super
core
cool.
gameplay loop. Go in, use your arrows, come out, and you know, as we talked about in the blog post, mobility and you know, swiftness, being mobile and controlling the battlefield is also part of the spec, and that's going to come through more of the
Yeah, look
utilities when we
there.
get into those.
It has a movement
The
speed
utilities are gonna be
buff.
squalls, which are basically small bursts of wind magic that are kind of like cantrips, but cantrips already exist in Ranger, so these are windy, small wind magic effects. The heal going to be pretty simple. You're going to heal yourself and give yourself super speed and cleanse some conditions. It's a very basic, you know, heal, but does what you want. There'll be a couple super speed tie-ins when we get into the traits, so that's pretty good, but it's just, you know, good value, what you want from your heal. We probably have seen this, but I want to make sure people know that there's no weapon restriction on Galeshot. You know, the F3 is just like an addition, so you're gonna have 2 weapons normally plus the bow. There's no locking your skills.
I thought it was gonna have the drawback, but there is none. Oof, that is very strong. Okay.
So now, just wanted to make sure because I saw, you know, some confusion over that. So then we can go into the more utilities. There's kind of like 2 offensive ones, 2 defensive ones. We can talk about the offensive ones first. The first one is Piercing Gales. It's going to be pretty simple, just damaging abilities that you want to fit into like a rotation in PvE or use for additional poke. You're going to shoot 5 projectiles that pierce, kind of like in a pattern to make an X formation that I think looks pretty cool. And as it says, it's going to pierce. These projectiles inflict vulnerability, and then its baseline going to get additional damage increase from vulnerability. So if someone has 10 stacks, you're going to get the 10% bonus from vulnerability, but also deal an additional 20% damage. And then another tweak to the skill is that it's going to fly faster, the arrow or the wind magic projectiles, if you yourself have swiftness or super speed. So it's going to be kind of trading with someone if they know the timing for it, and kind of throw in a bit of a tweak, give yourself some swiftness, and the projectiles will come at them a bit faster, so they have to react differently.
That's pretty cool.
And then the second utility that's going to be offensive is called
That is not.
This skill is intended to be a payoff for having a lot of projectiles, using things like longbow, using like Axe 2. You're going to create a screen of freezing wind, and then as you shoot projectiles through the screen, they'll get frozen, which will chill the enemy they hit and deal additional damage. So this has the potential to do a lot of additional procs of that damage and chill. Has the potential to do not that many, so you really need to plan around when you're going to use the screen. You know, put it up right before you're in a Hawkeye, use the Piercing Gales through it. You know, if you rapid fire it, it's going to...
Does this work with your allies' projectiles? Because if it does, this is kind of broken.
To be, you know, plus 10 extra procs. This is a way to encourage, you know, some more bow usage in the elite specialization outside of like just having the normal cyclone bow.
Also works with any projectile skill, right? I can use my axe and throw some axes through it.
Yep. Then we can move on to the defensive utilities. The first one is going to be Wind Shear. This is just a quick knockback around you, a swell of wind. It's going to, like I said, knock back enemies, stun break you, and then it has a very short projectile reflex. So if you see a pretty important one coming, again, having that, you know, edge over range trades, you can reflect that back at people. Then the last skill is going to be Whirlwind. This is going to be...
Wait, how long was that?
A completely mobility focused skill. It's ground targeted. You're going to leap through a whirlwind, evading while you're leaping, and then grant yourself a burst of super speed. It's going to be important, you know, if you're a long range character, you want to position yourself well in fights. This is going to be an important tool for that. Just quick burst, movement speed, short evade. Get yourself where you need to be to, you know, be in the best position in fights.
Well, this is going to be as obnoxious as Thief
we can get on
did.
to the elite skill, Perfect Storm. You're going to charge up, throw a tornado in a direction, and then where that tornado lands, it'll grow larger and kind of deal ticking damage while it's there. So it's a DPS skill. And then when you throw the tornado, it'll launch people along with it. And kind of the special part about the skill is that the launch is variable. It will launch them towards where you targeted the tornado.
This is so broken.
If you launch an enemy, they'll launch...
I don't even think about what this is. Dude, I don't even think about what this is going to be at PvP and World vs. World. This is going to be so obnoxious that this class is going to be so obnoxious in World v World. I can just see it.
But if you target it all the way out, the tornado will kind of carry them with you and go a really long launch. And then the end goal is that they'll always end where the tornado ends, so you can get that ticking damage on them.
Okay, so the way this is probably going to be is you're going to like launch them and then like immobilize them in the tornado.
Right, so we can move on to the traits.
All right, traits.
Yep. Right, starting with the minors. You know, the first one, just as always, just explains the spec, the teaching of the Tango. You can see there that arrows have a 5-second recharge time to start. Obviously, things can be tweaked like that. Has a tooltip for Hawkeye. Then we can move on to the Master Miner, Bird of Prey. Strike damage increased while you have swiftness or super speed, and swiftness is more effective. So this is an ore, so if you have swiftness or super speed, it doesn't stack. You're just going to get a damage bonus.
What is the strike damage increase? Well, you have swiftness or super speed. Swiftness is more effective. So swiftness is going to be as effective as super speed, basically. They're going to be interchangeable.
For the things like using the heal, get the super speed, the procs, and the trade line, and just making yourself faster in general, as a spec wants to do. And then we can go.
But it's interesting. It's only strike damage increase, so they didn't add anything for condition damage. So this is going to be purely power spec.
And the trade line, and just making yourself faster in general, as a spec wants to do. And then we can go to the Grandmaster Minor, Jetstream. It's just going to give you a base movement speed increase. We see a lot. Just even if you don't have swiftness or super speed, going to move faster. And then Hawkeye will grant you super speed. Sometimes you need to commit a lot to get that Hawkeye bonus. So this is going to make sure you get that Bird of Prey.
I don't think this is that useful. I think they might need to add more to this. As a Grandmaster, I feel like if you were to like swap these two around, like this skill here is stronger than this one. But
when you're using it, and also just a burst of movement speed to reposition after having to invest into it.
With that leaping in 3-second CD,
We can move on to the
it's probably a
attitude.
count
The
recharge.
first one is going to be Joy of Movement. This is just a simple bonus onto your squalls. When you use them, you'll remove a movement pairing conditions. Those can be pretty deadly, especially this spec when you get chilled, immobilized, pretty vulnerable. So you have this trait so that when you use your whirlwind, it'll move immobilized, so you can still get out, or just make sure you're staying on your feet.
You are never locking down this class.
Then the next one's going to be Feel the Rush, which causes movement skills to grant you swiftness and endurance. Movement skills really good with this elite spec. Sword, great sword. They're not ranged, but they have good gap creators, gap closers. So using this, you're gonna feel the wind as you rush through it. It's gonna give you some swiftness to stay.
Which gives you
also
strike
a bit of
damage
endurance
bonus.
to keep you defensive if you're using those movement skills to stay in like melee range, for example.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Then last we have Wuthering Wind. It's going to add an additional proc to when you bluster. Your pet's next attack is going to create just small damaging swell around the target. So it's just additional damage on the bluster. It is AoE damage, give it a bit better cleave, and have some interactions with your pet. Bluster has a couple other interactions in the spec, so this trait has a potential to proc a decent amount, and it's just some additional damage if you want that from this tier.
Well, that's probably what we're going to be using in PvE. So, I guess the foster attacking pets will be better. Sorry, let me go back. I want to read that
Around
tooltip.
the target, so it's just additional damage on the bluster. It is AoE damage, give it a bit better cleave, and have some interactions with your pet. Bluster has a couple other interactions in the spec, so this trait has a potential to proc a decent amount, and it's just some additional damage if you want.
Okay, yeah, so it's only when you use the two.
In this tier.
Okay.
We can move to the master tier. And the first one we have Flock Together. This is the one we talked about in the blog post. Avian pets have increased strike damage and health, and B skills grant quickness around the ranger. This is a pet trait like you see we've been adding to the core traits. This was actually the first pet trait. We really wanted birds to have a tie-in with this spec. It was very thematic, with the wind and the Tengu and all.
So, one issue currently that Ranger has and the spec doesn't answer it, it actually makes it more apparent, is that there's no DPS way to give alacrity. Untamed is the quickness spec for Ranger. And yeah, this one also gives quickness. So either they need to make Untamed give alacrity, or they need to make it viable for Druid to give alacrity. Because currently I can see the main issue with this being kind of very much like exposed further.
And so we created this idea, and we were also be like, wait, this is cool for all the pets. So we kind of reverse added them to the core lines, but this one was actually the real one. So it's gonna, again, make your birds. It affects Phoenix, it affects Moas, just, things with feathers. It's gonna make them deal increased damage and also grant quickness around the ranger.
We're gonna use Phoenix, clearly.
Along with another Grandmaster trait, we're gonna try and have the spec do a quick DPS in PvE as an additional role as to just normal DPS. So probably want this trait to make it easier. We can go on to, the next master tier. It's gonna be Perilous Skies. This is going to cause Quarry's Peril, that was the 4 skill in your Cyclone Bow, to be replaced by Pelt. Pelt is pretty similar to Quarry's Peril, except a couple of key differences. It's going to get 2 ammo, so you're going to be able to use it more. It's only going to cost 1 arrow, but it's going to eschew that immobilization. So basically, you can get more damage out of the slot, better poke, and like situations for World v World, but you're going to lose that powerful immobilize. So it's kind of a trade how you want that skill.
But more damage.
More
So that's going to be
uses, which means
PvE.
faster Hawkeyes as well. And again, Quarry's Peril will have additional bonus, so this trade will get better. Let's talk about one of the Grandmaster traits. And the last master trait, last master trait is going to be fetch. This is going to be just value off pet swap. Pet swaps can be interesting traits for a burst of, like just.
Pet swaps, restore arrows. I don't think any of the builds are going to use this. I think you're either going to grab the quickness trait or you're going to grab the damage increase trait.
It's going to give you 2 arrows back. Arrows normally have 5 seconds, so you have to wait a bit of time to get a full combo back, but you can take this trait if you want to speed that up a bit. Catch people off guard if you just need some arrows, like use a lead back or something. Pretty simple. Then we can get into the Grandmaster.
You like the middle one in this line? Yeah, it's pretty good.
These are all, the theme of the Grandmasters is they're all going to tweak how you play the bow, what its exact gameplay loop looks like. You can start with the middle again. Go for Gale Force. Gale Force is going to augment your Wind Force stacks, which were the things that you built up so you can get Hawkeye. It's going to give them a small movement speed and damage increase bonus. And then when you use Hawkeye, it's going to convert these Wind Forces into...
Wind Force grants a stacking increase to movement speed and damage. When you have Hawkeye, convert these into a stronger bonus for a duration. So wait. It doesn't give you a stronger bonus because unless these two stack.
To a stronger bonus for a short period of time. So the goal here is that you kind of have a normal game. Gameplay loop with your Cyclone Bow, and then after you finish it, you're going to get almost a Sikkim type bonus to go into like a weapon skill type burst. So use this, and then you go do your Whirling Defense, go do like a rapid fire. It's just carrying that moment of power farther into your normal weapon skills. Then we can go to the top one. This is going to be Cloudburst, kind of where I was talking about some synergies between it and the other skills. Quarry's Peril and Supersonic Arrow, those are going to be the 4 and 5 skills, are going to reset the cooldown of Bluster. And then when you use Bluster or Hawkeye, you're going to give boons to nearby allies. These are quickness and PvE, it's swiftness and fury in the competitive modes. But basically, we want the value for there to be on the cooldown of Bluster. But it's going to change kind of the cadence, where you use 2, then you use 4, 2 again, 5, 2. Kind of get a lot faster of a Hawkeye going. You don't have to wait for cooldowns longer, so it's going to kind of condense it. And then also be the option where you're supporting your allies. So also...
Okay. Quarry's Peril and Supersonic Arrow reset the cooldown of Bluster. When you use Bluster or Hawkeye, grant boons to nearby allies. They're probably going to have to nerf this. Just looking at a baseline, Bluster's cooldown is... what? 3 seconds. You grant quickness for 6. The cooldown of feathers is 5 seconds per feather stack. I pretty much see that you could run this without the avian quickness trait, and you will probably still be able to upkeep quickness.
Work off the Perilous Skies, you're going to get 2 pelts, which is 2 recharges for your blusters, which procs Wuthering Winds, so going like diagonally, got a lot of synergy in the line. Then we move on to the final Grandmaster trait. It's going to be Shrike. The goal with Shrike is it's just for people that want to stay in the bow as long as possible. It's going to trigger off of missile hits, and missiles are just like projectiles, you know, from your bow, from your axes, what have you, things that fly through. Every time you hit someone, every 8 hits with a missile, you're going to shoot a volley of arrows, and also reach, store an arrow. It's basically as you're auto-attacking the bow, or you can swap to like a longbow, get a rapid fire. The whole goal here is that you have a lot of arrows so you can stay in the bow as long as possible for people that want to do that.
Okay. Nah. That last trait's kind of meh.
Little bonus. You know, when you're using your pet Cal, does it feel a bit more responsive to you? Almost.
You know, it kind of does.
Almost like when you tell it to use an F2, it will do it immediately. You know, part of the spec and making sure things like flock together birds have long cast times. So has been a bit of an issue that for a while.
Bro, wait, actually no, that's so funny, dude. That's so funny, dude. I think I actually want to cry. Holy fuck, dude. He's talking about how much more responsive the pet is, and the pet sins to being unresponsive.
Yeah, I think little bonus. You know, when you're using your pet cow, does it feel a bit more responsive to you? Almost.
You know, it kind of does.
Almost like when you tell it to use an F2, it will do it immediately. You know, part of the spec and making sure things like flock together birds have long cast times. So
He tells it to F1 and it just stands still. No, dude. Fuck me dead, dude. Look, I appreciate they're trying to. Oh no, dude. It's probably because it has no cooldowns and it's bugged.
Has been a bit of an issue that for a while pet responsiveness wasn't great. You weren't able to interrupt their commands. We made sure that we went and fixed pet AI, that when you use a skill, your pet will obey you. So this applies to all ranger specs, untamed.
So, okay, I appreciate the thought, but the problem was that it wasn't that it would not obey you. The problem was that your pet would finish whatever it was doing before it listened. So if the way this functioned, if you were playing Druid, you'd probably just have your pet on passive instead, because it made your pet more responsive, especially if your pet was responsible for stuff like Aegis, right? Like if you were using White Tiger, but it was like, it was a shout. I don't know why the pet needed to like stop attacking a shout, but yeah. Anyway.
Druid, what have you. When you use an F2, you know, your White Tiger will give you Aegis when you want it to. So we want to make sure that when the spec comes out and you're using those birds, they feel responsive like you would want them to.
But now the question is, does it interrupt the auto chain?
No recharges, but I don't expect that anyone will run into that.
That covers it with the Galeshot if you want to hop over
Very good.
tooltip. Get it
The
before.
final tooltip pass.
Okay.
The feedback you guys put out, we're gonna have forum threads for each specialization as normal. Looking at other avenues as well, other social.
Okay. If you guys want and you like giving them feedback, give them feedback. They need to make it. So condition is 2 issues currently that I see with the Galeshot. 1, condition's not viable. And if you're making it an like a quick DPS, you need to make it so condition is available in some way, shape, or form. It's almost impossible to make hybrid builds work anyway, so I don't see any issue with like slapping conditions onto some of the traits. Like maybe make a trade-off, but it's gonna take away some of the identity that some of these other ones have on them. The other thing is they need to make something where alacrity is worth giving. There's no current alac DPS class for Ranger. It kind of feels it quite a lot. But overall, pretty good. Pretty cool. I don't know how exactly this is going to play out, but it looks to be a very strong like power DPS class. Especially where places where projectiles are effective. You could still reflect stuff, so like fractals. I doubt the burst is going to be big as places like where you can utilize Sikkim, because Sikkim is just like an insane damage increase. But you might be able to, especially because now you got the damage buff. I could see this being abused in fractals, so this would be pretty cool.
Media is going to read all you guys say. I know the beta is for the feedback, what you guys like, what you guys don't like, number tuning, of course, the art, the audio, everything. So, you know, we're just as excited as you guys are for you guys to get your hands on these things.
Also want to see how the movement skills feel with 200 ping.
Once again, because it's true that obviously things are going to be a little bit unbalanced, most likely. You know, there's going to be things that need improvement, mechanics that are maybe a little crazier than they need to be and need to be kind of reined back in or changed. You know, we've definitely seen...
CMC, just don't apologize for this, okay? Let people cry, okay? It's fine when things are broken. People will make content about it being broken, okay? You guys can adjust it later. Like, if people cry and stuff, just let them cry, okay? Like, dude, how many people watch League videos, okay? Because they love to see like some dumb build that's broken, okay? It's good for your game. okay, for a period of time. Just make sure you fix it later on. Okay, it's fine. Break stuff. Don't be scared to break stuff. No one cares. If you break stuff, people love it. Okay, they go and they try out a new class. They go and play a new class. Okay, it's worthwhile. Just don't. Dude, people will cry and they'll be like, "Oh, this class is so broken." No, like no one cares. No one actually cares. Like fundamentally, like so long as it's not like doing like 50-60k damage, you're fine. Just make sure you like hotfix it. That's it.
Even with like some of the past non-elite spec betas, where we've been able to make some pretty significant changes to things based off player feedback, based off the results of betas, where some things just aren't going to work, and it's not what we're going for, but it's not something that
Mirage numbers. Yeah, Mirage numbers. Dude, like 54k damage, but no one, like most people aren't doing that as well. And it's fine having classes that are just like insane DPS when like the barrier to entry and playing those DPS classes is that much higher. They should make a rifle make 50k. True. But only when you're at max range and you're AFK. That's how they make it work.
Saw someone ask this. The Galeshot bow will be available underwater. We actually have a harpoon gun version of it. Wanted to make sure, you know, all these spec mechanics will be available underwater.
Holy shit, dude. It's already better than mech, dude. You can't use your mech underwater, but you can use a wind bow underwater, guys. Holy fuck. Oh, man.
So you can play them wherever, so that shouldn't be a worry.
The Cyclone harpoon gun.
The Cyclone harpoon, maybe the water spout harpoon gun, I don't.
We're almost done. Any final words, Taylor? Yep, and initial kind of reveal video and developer blog post, and then we'll be back with another live stream where we show off.
I mean, yeah, because Aqua Breather.
Profession, medium armor profession, and light armor profession.
As always, stay hydrated and always leave messages that the stream isn't as good without Roy on it.
You know, runs in the mists.
You in the mists.
The stream isn't as good with Roy not in it. Okay. Guys. So, initial thoughts. What are we thinking? Because the mech bugs and goes underwater anyway. Jokes aside, I made yeah. Thoughts on this so far. I really liked the Bard looks really strong support wise. The damage numbers are gonna 100% get nerfed and adjusted. I will be very surprised if they're not. Just looking at the numbers percentages is gonna be like insane. Like, yeah, the distort like group wide is insanely powerful, especially when Mesmer has 0 damaging elite skills. If you play this class as a DPS, you're 100% taking that invuln. Well, love precog is back, baby. Yeah. Yeah, I am 100% going to play the Bard as like a DPS. I think it's probably going to be stronger as power than it will be as Condi because you've all the percentage increases to power. But I think the Condi will also still be very strong, and the Condi will also have sustain because you got like that healing from the like every time you do torment or confusion, which you're a Mesmer. You're like you shit out confusion and like other stuff. So like you're 100% running that. On top of that, yeah, I think the Bard's probably going to get adjusted. Probably going to be playable as power and Condi. A Luminary looks interesting enough. It's nice. We're going to have a nice heal spec for Guardian that gives alacrity, and I'll play the Willbender memes. It's also doesn't have the drawbacks like with the mobility and stuff. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. It's going to be quite interesting. I think they do need to rework Light Aura. The Light Aura currently is like, you know, like it's just a worse version of Resolution. And to like get auras in this game is like a lot more effort than giving boons. I think they need to rework it. I don't know. Either make it do like pulsing strike damage or like, you know what I mean? Like, it needs to do something. It needs to do something. Like, they reworked the, like, or whenever you get, you know what? Make it retribution. Whenever you get hit with light aura, you take strike damage. Or the enemy takes strike damage. Like, boom. There you go. Easy. You already had that functionality in the past. Who cares? Yeah. Make it retribution. Yeah. I could see that being worthwhile more than the current iteration. Other than that, I think the Luminary is quite strong, quite cool. I think the virtue triggering abilities is going to be insane. Like, you might be able to do insane burn damage with it, like burst burn damage. I could see being a thing with like the resetting of skills with the inside the Luminary. I could see some memes being made from that, especially with support as well. And then the Galeshot seems interesting. Seems kind of cool. I'll probably play it. It might be fun. I just don't know if it's going to be worth like playing that over like Untamed or Soul Beast. Like, they're going to have to tweak numbers, but I mean, having access to range whenever you want is like kind of insane. There's like 0 drawbacks to like weapon swapping or doing anything like that. Like, I'll definitely be playing it heaps, especially open world. I think it does struggle with sustain though, at least from what I saw, but it's still pretty cool. But yeah, I think that is enough of that. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe,